You're listening to Wild About Arizona, the official podcast of the Arizona Game and Fish Department.
And welcome to Wild About Arizona. I'm John Treeweiler with the Arizona Game and Fish Department. Arizona provides some of the best wildlife viewing opportunities in the nation with more than 800 animal species and 50 million public acres of natural land to explore. But what if you're not sure where to go or what to look for? Maybe you need a wildlife viewing event to help you figure it out. And that's what we're talking about today, our wildlife viewing events with Jeff Meyers and Cheyenne Dubiach of our wildlife viewing program. Jeff, welcome back, and Cheyenne, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Appreciate you having us as guests.
Yeah, it's exciting to be here. So like we mentioned, today is all about wildlife viewing events because we host and put on a variety of events for the public when it comes to viewing wildlife in our state. So we're going to talk about that today, some of the things you can experience, explore, the different opportunities. But first, let's learn a little about your roles here at Arizona Game and Fish. Cheyenne, maybe we'll start with you about what you do here with the wildlife viewing program.
So I'm the wildlife viewing program coordinator. I work very closely with Jeff. There's two of us in the whole state that do this program, and I work on coordinating all these different events that we're going to talk about today. And we have a good time, and we educate folks about different wildlife here in Arizona. So.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I know there's a lot of cool stories that we'll dive into. And Jeff, we've had you on before talking about kind of wildlife viewing in general, but this will be more kind of event focused. But again, just refresh us on your role with the department.
So I'm the program manager for our wildlife viewing program, and our main focus is to educate people and create kind of a link between our citizenry and our wildlife by educating them, teaching them how to wildlife view, how to do it safely, how to do it ethically, and then providing them lots of exciting kind of dynamic opportunities for them to kind of either get out into nature, to be involved with events, or to learn about our fabulous wildlife that we have here in the state.
So when it comes to the various events that you offer, there are a variety of them, from bat netting to bighorn sheep tours, wildlife photography events. Do you want to go over some of them with us?
Sure. So this year we really kind of went for it, and we doubled our number of events that we typically hold. As Cheyenne said, there's two of us for the whole state. So we try to do things in different parts of the state, but the majority of our events are based in the greater Phoenix area because that's where we're based. So the things that we do they range, like you said, from bat netting, bighorn sheep viewing. We have specific photography-based events for wildlife photography, such as a sandhill crane event that we do. We also do a series of wildlife lectures. And those lectures can be either done virtually or in person, depending on the lecture itself. And we usually do about 2 of those a month, and they are normally focused on topics related to a critter or a family or a group of critters. And it gives people the opportunity to learn about that specific wildlife, everything about it, from its biology to its reproduction to its distribution to issues that influence that animal's daily life and the species population. As we move through those, we also host events that are about the general topics of wildlife viewing, kind of how to do wildlife viewing, where to go to wildlife view, and things like that. That's the focus of those, is to really educate people. We do a lot of work with like the Master Naturalists Association, and we do work with them to help get the people that are working on becoming a master naturalist up to speed on our local fauna. And that's really our focus for those things. But we like to educate people because what we find is that an educated populace tends to be a passionate populace about the wildlife. And that's our goal, is, conservation and protection of that wildlife.
And some of these locations where you do these events, like you said, the majority of them kind of in the Phoenix metro area or kind of surrounding, but they're all over the state. I always find it fascinating too that talk to us about some of these locations, because it's and you net bats. I mean, that's just so cool. Like, you don't know that, not everyone knows that you can do that or that we do that.
Absolutely, and we're the regulatory authority when it comes to bats and bat netting in the state of Arizona. So these are protected species, and what we're doing is working to kind of dispel all the negative myths that are out there about bats. Bats are actually incredibly fascinating critters. They're smart, they're long-lived, and they're vital to the habitats in which they live. So we do a lot of bat nettings here in the valley. We do them out along the Verde River in the East Valley. We do them with some of our partners like Southwest Wildlife Conservation Center or Boyce Thompson Arboretum. We're trying to establish some sites to do bat netting in the West Valley so we can better serve our West Valley constituents. And we go out, we set up these nets, and we give a talk about bats. And depending on the night, see, we're not in charge of the wildlife. We're not in control, I should say, of the wildlife. So whether or not they show up is kind of by the good graces of the wildlife. But for example, our first bat netting this year, we got skunked. We got no bats whatsoever. But the people are paying a nominal fee to be there, and that fee goes directly back to Game and Fish, goes to wildlife conservation and education, and allows us to do more programming throughout the year. So we want to make sure that people who have paid to be at an event have a good experience, that they come away feeling that it was good value for their dollar, and that they were entertained and educated. And indeed, the post-event survey showed that they were. They had a good time. We find other critters for them to look at. We call in screech owls. We ended up catching a green heron in our nets that night.
How do you call in a screech owl?
Oh, you play the call for a screech owl, and they usually respond if they're in the area.
Do we have the call? Can we? Can you do it?
Like with my voice? No, nobody wants that. And I don't have my phone on me. Otherwise, I could play the call.
We'll add it in later.
It's a Western screech owl. So we do all these kind of things to make sure that people feel like they're well educated and that they really had a good time. Cheyenne will take a black light and go out and catch some scorpions and bring them back for people to look at.
I mean, we even did a scorpion walk this time. I had people get up and I was like, all right, we're going on an adventure. Watch your toes. And we went around and looked for a bunch of scorpions. This was fun, though.
And how receptive are they to that?
They are all about it. They are all about it. It gave me a little bit of anxiety. I had to count people. I was like, do we have everyone back yet? I don't know what's going on, but it all worked out.
Yeah, I mean, we try to keep people educated and entertained, but also keep them safe, right? We see Western diamondback rattlesnakes at one of our sites that we do bat netting almost every time we're there. And we're trying to expand that. So we're looking at doing a bat netting event in Prescott for next season. We're hoping to do a bat netting in Tucson, which we used to do but haven't done in a few years. We'd look to get back to doing that. First of all, we catch different species, right? Arizona is second only to Texas. We have 28 different species of bats in Arizona, and it's a really cool event when people get to see these critters up close. And of course they can't touch them, but they can see them up close, they learn about them, and then they kind of associate this animal with a personality, with a behavior, that it has its own intrinsic value. And that's kind of our goal for all wildlife, is to make people realize that wildlife has an intrinsic value in and of itself.
Well, and that's got to be fascinating to be able to, because a bat, we can only see from, you're seeing it in the sky. Usually they're pretty fast. So to actually see it up close in person and still has just got to be a fascinating experience for the people that are there.
It is. There's this one photo, and it's silly, but this one photo that I always use in my presentations whenever I am presenting a slide deck on what we do. And it's this photo of me processing a bat. So when we catch bats, we put them in these cloth bags to keep them calm and keep them safe, bring them to a table. There, we take them out of the bags and we process them. And what that means is we collect baseline data. So we identify the species, the gender, whether it's in reproductive condition, if it has mites or things like that. We record that data. That goes into a statewide database. And then we show them off to the people. They can take photographs of them. They can get fairly close to the animal, and they can see its face and all the different features and the different personalities that different species have. They really do behave very differently. And then we let them go, and we just release them back into the night. And people really enjoy that, and they see that a California leaf nose is very calm and kind of relaxed.
Sure. Yeah.
While you're holding it, it's looking at you like, why are you doing this?
They're adorable.
They really are.
And if you're not sure if you want to come to one of our bat netting events, you should just come to see Jeff's impression of a pallid bat. It's probably my most favorite part of the whole night. he does a really good impression of how angry pallid bats are when you're holding them. Complete opposite of a California leaf nose, who's very calm, just looking around, where a pallid bat is just like biting your finger off.
Pallid bats are probably my second favorite bat in Arizona. They're just really unique. They have this little pug nose, and they have a little gremlin face, and they have a lot of attitude. So this is something that we're talking is about 3.5 inches from snout to vent. That means nose to butt. And they have all the attitude in the world. The whole time you're holding them, they are trying to gnaw off your fingers.
They do no damage at all. They can't get through your glove
we're wearing protective gear, but yeah, they are
it's
like,
funny how they try.
And they're trying to gnaw on your hand the entire time. It's
See, John, it's good, right? You saw it in person here.
Yeah. If only we had visual here as well. You have to go to a bat netting to experience.
That's right.
So next time there's a bat netting now, people are going to come to you, Jeff, and go, well, I'm here for the pallid bat impression. So.
Yes, please do. Please do.
Well, and we do events all over. So we do like one of our sandhill crane photography events, a really popular event. We do that down at Whitewater Draw, which is a commission-owned property down in southeastern Arizona by McNeil, Arizona, kind of by Douglas area, about half an hour from Tombstone, about a half hour from Bisbee. And this is, in my opinion, one of the best wildlife viewing scenes in the state of Arizona, is going down a Whitewater Draw between November and early February, when there's 20 to 25,000 sandhill cranes on the draw, watching and hearing those cranes. If you ever want to see kind of the connection between birds and dinosaurs, go and listen to those cranes. The cacophony that they make when they're on the draw and watching them lift off at sunrise and come back in the mid to late morning is just something to behold. And then we do that with George and Draco, our award-winning staff photographer, works with people and their cameras and tells them what to do and kind of how to maximize their wildlife photography experience.
Well, that's the cool part about these too, is that, you're getting an opportunity to learn from our experts, and not only you guys, but we're bringing in other experts like George, our photographer, so people can, talk to him and get explanations from him and just figure out what it's like to shoot award-winning wildlife.
Oh, there's no doubt. We work with some of the best wildlife experts in the state of Arizona, I would say in the nation, that we have within these walls, and we work closely with those people. We're working right now with Tom Jones, our herpetologist, and his crew to put on more herp-focused events. Herps are reptiles and amphibians. So we can take people out looking at those cool critters that kind of go under the radar, fly under the radar for a lot of people, but they're fascinating. And we can do events with people like that. And Cheyenne, do you want to talk about our collaboration with our boating education?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So even this past year, we've done a kayaking and birding event.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, I was up at Watson Lake. We had a great time. A lot of water birds, obviously, but, a lot of different showcase type. We even had a vermilion flycatcher there at that time too. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. We're going to continue working with them on those collaborative events, more kayaking and birding. We're looking at even some river type trips for that sort of thing. We're also working with, they're the same crew, OHV type events, where we'll go out OHV and then we'll pick a spot, we'll hang out, we'll go looking for scorpions. We can, watch bats from above, all that kind of stuff. And we'll do night hikes and whatnot with them. So.
And that event looked really fun because people were in the kayak, you're on the water, but the whole goal was to kind of it's a different perspective of viewing the wildlife. You're not, on land, you're actually out in the water.
Exactly. Yeah. Just giving people those different avenues of how they can view wildlife. It doesn't always have to be a hike. If you have a kayak at home and you want to get out on the water, well, you can do both. You can bring your Nox and you go look at some birds. Not to say it isn't challenging at times. You got to find some calmer water. It got a little windy toward the end, but luckily that whole early morning it was calm enough to see plenty of birds, and we had a blast. I think everybody enjoyed themselves.
And that's one of our main goals, is not just to get people to come to our events, but at our events is to train them, to teach them how to do this on their own. We want to get people out into the wilds of Arizona, looking at wildlife themselves. We know through surveys done in the state of Arizona that about 50% of Arizonans watch wildlife or view wildlife, and about 29% take trips in the state of Arizona just to view wildlife. We want to make sure that they're well prepared to do that with us and then without us. So, for example, when we take people out Bighorn sheep tours, on our Bighorn sheep tours, we take them out on pontoon boats on Canyon Lake. It's one of my favorite events. Logistically, very difficult to arrange because we have to work with so many different groups to get that going. But once we're out there on the boat, one of our main goals is teaching people how to spot bighorn sheep, because the fact is they blend into the desert very well. And seeing them up on the cliffs where they might be a quarter mile away from you is not an easy thing to do. So we teach people where to look, when to look, what to look for. So whether they're with us or not, they can kind of replicate these conditions on their own so they can enjoy wildlife viewing on their own.
Yeah, because I was going to ask about it. We've been talking a lot about bats and birds, but it's not all that. You've got, like you said, bighorn sheep tours, bison tours, right?
We do bison events where we take people out to look at bison up on Raymond Wildlife Area, another commission-owned property. We have, coming up next month, we have an elk workshop up out of Region 2, so Flagstaff office, where it's really a Region 2 event where we give a talk about elk, and then we take people out viewing elk. Sometimes hundreds of elk are available to see at that time and place. And it's really a cool event because, elk are massive critters and really charismatic. And seeing them out in the wild, if you've never seen them before, I know I moved here from New England and I'm used to whitetail deer, which granted our whitetail in New England are bigger than the whitetail in Arizona. But when I saw elk for the first time, it was like a whitetail on steroids. I've never seen an animal that big other than a moose, and it was just a really cool event. So we try to diversify and do as much as we can, but like Cheyenne said, there's 2 of us for the whole state, so we're limited in the number of events. Plus, we did 48. This calendar year, we're doing 48 public events, which is almost one a week. That we're doing, and the way it works out is actually some weeks you'll have 2 or 3 public events, and we do other things as well. So one of the other things that we do is we provide wildlife streaming cameras for the public,
right?
And those people can watch from their own computer, keep up in the background, and keeping those cameras maintained is in and of itself a full-time job. As a matter of fact, a couple of weeks we're going down to fix the camera down at Whitewater Draw, which is a Sandhill Crane cam, which is probably our most consistent and best view camera. But we try to get people this intimate glimpse into the daily lives of wildlife, whether we're doing it through our lecture series, whether we're doing it through our in-person events like a bat netting or bighorn sheep viewing, or whether we're doing it through our streaming cameras.
Or whether you're on the land or on the water.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right. We're trying to cover all the bases because Arizona is such a diverse state with such incredible wildlife and scenery.
And even on the bighorn sheep tours on Canyon Lake, that's just an experience, I feel, of itself, to be on the water, on that lake, kind of looking up at the rock structures. I mean, that's just a cool perspective right there.
Oh, it is. And we point out things. So my background, happens to be geology. And so I do point out some of the geologic features, including this one little pocket where those mountains were formed largely by volcanic rock, and there used to be a forest there. And during one of the eruptions, those trees got knocked down like cordwood, and they are now petrified in the cliff face wall. And we take people in our boat, we can get right up within about 5 feet of the cliff face and take people so they can see all those trees that are about 230, 240 million years old in that rock face. It's a really cool experience beyond just the cool wildlife that we get to see.
Well, and that kind of segues into my next question. I mean, this has just got to be a really neat experience for people that go on these events, whether it's a bat netting or a bighorn sheep, kayaking, whatever it may be. The experience and the takeaway for them has got to be just great.
That's our goal. Our goal is always to make sure that people come away with the experience kind of a lifetime. That's really what we're after. We want people to say, wow, that was really cool. The wildlife was really cool. I learned a bunch of stuff, but I had a good time doing it. because when you combine all those things, the net result is that not only did they have a good time for the 3 hours of a bighorn sheep tour or the 3 hours of a bat netting, but they remember it for the rest of their lives because they enjoyed themselves while learning it. And therefore, it really cements itself into their kind of memory. So they learn stuff and they keep that knowledge for the rest of their lives. And that means you're going to have a passionate advocate for wildlife in that constituent. And that's really half the goal, is to get people to understand the good work that the Arizona Game and Fish Department does in protecting and conserving wildlife, and to understand that the majority of the work protecting that wildlife in their own backyard, the boots on the ground doing that work, is their state wildlife agency, and in this case, the Arizona Game and Fish Department. And they should really be on board with us if they're on board with conservation.
Well, go ahead, Cheyenne.
I was going to say along those same lines, we wouldn't be able to do all of these events without our folks here at Game and Fish. I mean, shout out to Georgia and Draco, shout out to Kim and Josh in boating education, shout out to Brian Klinger and his team. Like, all these folks make our events possible and make them as good as they can be. We can talk about wildlife all day, every day, anywhere, right? But being able to do it, boots on the ground, as you said, out in the wild, I mean, it just creates this whole other experience that we wouldn't be able to do without those folks. So I just wanted to add on to what you were saying.
No, Cheyenne's absolutely hit the nail on the head. We work with some of the best biologists around, whether it's Tuck and his crew with raptors, Tom and his crew, Tom Jones and his crew with the herpetofauna in the state. We're very lucky to have these people in the same building and or the same agency for the state that we can work with and kind of pick their brains and use their expertise and sometimes use their equipment to be able to hold these events.
We employ just a few biologists.
Yes. I mean, that's the thing, is like a lot of people, they think of game and fish and they think of hunting and fishing, of course, because that's, one of our main functions is working with those folks, with hunters and anglers. But we also serve the entire constituency, including what we would call non-traditional, right? People that aren't hunting and fishing but are wildlife viewing. Those people are passionate wildlife advocates, and they need to know about the good work that we do.
But that's the best part, because, not everyone likes to hunt or goes hunting.
Sure.
Not everyone likes to fish or goes fishing, but they still love wildlife. They love the outdoors, love conservation. You've got to see all kinds of people when it comes to hosting these events. I mean, I'm thinking like this is the perfect event, something to do if you're new to Arizona, right? You're going to get to learn about its wildlife, learn about, gosh, I didn't even know we had 28 species of bat here, right? You could learn about scorpions. I think when people move to Arizona, I think that's the number one thing they're concerned about, right?
Scorpions and rattlesnakes.
Scorpions and snakes, yep. So you learn about that.
We're giving a talk in 2 weeks on scorpions. And you're absolutely correct. And we get a broad swath of the population. We get retirees that have the time and resources to do these kind of things, and we get newbies to the state of Arizona that are coming in. And like I was talking about, that one photo that I always use in my slide deck is of this kid standing across the table from me while I'm processing a bat, and he is just jaw agape in awe at seeing a bat 3 feet away from him. He's never seen a bat that close. He's never seen that little face. He's never seen the behavior. So now that animal is no longer a thing that flies in the night sky. It's a real entity to him. And just that look of surprise and awe on his face is why I always use that picture, because people don't realize the intricate lives that wildlife leads until they start learning more and more about it. And that's our job.
Well, and I feel like, you've got people who are novices, maybe new to the state, new to wildlife viewing, but this is also a great opportunity for, people who maybe, they do know a fair amount about wildlife viewing, or they're a wildlife photographer themselves, but this is a great opportunity to even just, have an expert right next to you and kind of maybe give you that extra level up if you need it.
It's totally true. So we do, obviously, if somebody's a complete beginner with studying wildlife, there's so much they could learn by being involved with a program like ours. But additionally, we get people, just at our last bat netting, we had somebody come up from Tucson to a bat netting in the Phoenix area, northeast Phoenix area. And she knew a lot about our local wildlife, but she still came away from that event learning more and really getting to experience the wildlife face to face, which she didn't before, because how do you experience bats face to face? It's a very rare type event. You can't just go anywhere and do that.
Yeah, we give that exclusive access, if you will, to go see bats, or even if you don't have a boat, we take you out to see bighorn sheep very close, and even kayaking, same thing. We provide kayaks, so it's awesome.
Well, yeah, that's the cool part of it. You don't have to have a kayak, a boat,
You don't even need
all
binos.
this stuff. Right?
Nope.
We
got
provide
it.
binoculars for people if they don't have the binoculars, and the whole part. And we even have kits that people can check out for a weekend or a week. It's kind of like an action packer, like a storage container that has 3 pairs of binoculars, and it has a bunch of field guides, and it has a hand lens, which is like a magnifying glass, and activities for people to do with their family to enjoy the wildlife in their backyard. Because Arizona is such a diverse state, there's so many cool things that you can do in the state, and so many just breathtaking views that you can have, and wildlife just adds to that, in our opinion.
What's the biggest takeaway from people that go to these events? I mean, as we talked before, you had a bat netting where you didn't get any bats in the net. People still had a great time, they told you.
Yeah.
But kind of overall, whether it's bighorn sheep, bats, bison, whatever it is, what's the overall kind of takeaway or consensus from people who go to these events?
We hope that the number one takeaway message is that Arizona wildlife is really cool. It is really worth preserving, and that the people that are doing that work is the Arizona Game and Fish Department in majority, and that they should be on board with supporting the department. I mean, as you know, we don't get any general tax fund dollars, right?
Right.
And they need to be involved with us to let their voices be known, and they need to be involved with their lawmakers too, to let the lawmakers know that they're passionate about preserving and conserving Arizona's wildlife.
And these events, I mean, we've talked about how each of them in their own right are very unique, and each of them have your own opportunity to learn something, whether it's about the state, the wildlife, the environment they're in. But these are family-friendly events too. Like you mentioned, the kid being able to see the bat that close up and have that experience. This has got to be, great for a family to experience this.
They really are. Some of our events have age limits depending on most of that is related to safety factors.
Okay.
For example, at bat netting, we typically put a kind of age limit, a lower age limit of 10 years, because it's a 3-hour-long event. We want to make sure that they can, tolerate that, but also that they understand sticking close to mom and dad is important, because, again, we almost always see diamondback rattlesnakes there, western diamondbacks, and we want to make sure that everyone is safe. But yeah, exactly correct, that a lot of these events are family-friendly events, and they're really, wildlife viewing is, once you kind of get your foot in the door and learn what to do, it's a really inexpensive way to spend quality time with the family. Going out and looking at wildlife can be exhilarating, it can be educational, it can be fun, it can be a goal for the weekend or the week, and people come away feeling much closer together, having seen and experienced those things together.
Yeah, you can do it in your backyard, at the neighborhood park. I mean, there's so many options.
Well, yeah, you can take what you've learned and then take it elsewhere.
And that's part of the goal, is exactly that, like we talked about a little bit ago, is getting people to the point where they can feel confident doing wildlife viewing on their own. They can't go bat netting on their own, right? Because you need a special permit to do that. They have to join us to do that. But they can learn the ropes so they can go out and enjoy this, like Cheyenne said, ranging from their backyard to taking a trip just to see wildlife. There's a lot of really cool things and really cool places in the state, and if approached from a point of knowledge and safety, they can be done in a really fun way, an engaging way for the whole family.
And you shouldn't be concerned about going in a bat netting because you may see a western diamondback rattlesnake.
Oh, no. I mean, that's why we always tell people.
I mean, I'm hearing it right now. We've said, rattlesnake so many times. People are like, I'm not going to the bat netting. I don't want to see that.
No, I mean, to be honest, that's part of the experience. First of all, western diamondback rattlesnakes are a really cool animal in and of their own right.
Right.
And we take that as an opportunity to educate people. If the snake is posing a danger or a threat to the public, we're on it. We move the snake and relocate it so everyone is safe. The snake is safe and the people are safe. And we use that as an educational opportunity. So people come away learning way more than just about bats. They learn about everything that we see and hear while we're out there. And that's part of the goal.
Well, and you're understanding how wildlife act in their natural environment, which is so cool.
And, again, you really hit the nail on the head in the sense that part of the goal of wildlife viewing is viewing natural behavior. You don't want to infringe upon the animal's space. You want to see what it does when it doesn't know you're there. That's the best kind of wildlife viewing that there is. That's why binoculars are a really important tool. It's the main tool for wildlife viewers because it allows you to observe that animal up close from a safe distance, and that's safe for you and safe for the wildlife. So you're not influencing the behavior. You're seeing what this animal does on its daily basis, which is, to me, the coolest part of it.
Well, and not to mention, I think, people probably often don't realize this or kind of pass over it, but, wildlife viewing is a huge contribution to the economy as well.
Oh, it is. It's huge. I don't know the current numbers. The last study I know that was done that I can talk of off the top of my head was done 11 years ago now, and it showed that birders alone, so a big part of wildlife viewing group of the wildlife viewing group are birders, but they're far from the only people that are wildlife viewing. And birders alone in 2011 contributed over, I think it was $1.3 billion to the Arizona state economy because they come here, they stay in our hotels, they eat in our restaurants, they get gas at our gas stations, and they frequent some of the smaller communities too, which is kind of cool, is that for a lot of the smaller communities in Arizona, these are the people that they really should focus on attracting because they come, they stay for periods of time, and while they're here, they're supporting the local economy in Arizona.
Well, yeah, and especially when it comes to the sandhill cranes, people come from all over the world.
Oh, there's multiple species that we have. So when it comes to things like...
The birds come from all over the world, the people come from all over the world.
And the people follow. Birders are really passionate about what they do. And like for hummingbirds in places like Madera Canyon or Ramsey Canyon in southern Arizona, people come from all over the world to see that. Arizona is the #1 state in the nation for herpers. People that go to look for reptiles and amphibians, #1 state that people travel to do that is Arizona. Those people are like birders in the sense that they're really passionate about what they do and they travel to go do it. They travel to faraway places to see unique species. And we have unique species in spades here in Arizona.
Okay, I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but this is for both Jeff and Cheyenne here. We want to know, what is your favorite wildlife viewing event? And do you have a cool story to go along with it? And see, now I've created a problem. Now there's silence, and we have to think. And
there's too many.
So I don't know that I can narrow it down to one. In my opinion, one of the most special wildlife viewing events that you can have in the state of Arizona are the sandhill cranes in the wintertime.
That was going to be Cheyenne's.
That was going to be mine.
Yeah.
Darn it.
It really is I mean, I've been into multiple continents. I've been in Africa looking at wildlife. That is on par with any wildlife viewing I've done anywhere in the world. Watching those cranes take off as the sun is coming up above the horizon is just it's something magical. Likewise, bighorn sheep viewing is also a really special event. First of all, any day you get to spend, some time out on a boat looking at bighorn sheep for work, that's a good day.
Pretty good day.
It's a pretty good day.
Pretty good day.
And
someone's paying you to do that.
Someone's paying you to do that. And sometimes we get really close. Sometimes we get 15, 20 feet away from these bighorn.
Wow.
I'm talking, class 3 and 4 rams that are coming down to the water, big old rams, coming down to the water and drinking, and watch them swell up as they take in gallons of water at a time. And then so I'm not very helpful because I'm basically listing all of our events, but bat netting as well, because bat netting, we get to see some of the real biodiversity in the state. So our last bat netting, we got 21 bats, 4 different species with 21 individuals. And sometimes we get much more than that. Sometimes we'll get 12 or 13 different species, and that's just bats. We'll also see all kinds of cool invertebrates. We'll see all kinds of cool reptiles. We'll see all kinds of cool birds, or at least hear them if we don't see them. So anything that we get to do that has such an impact by the amount of biodiversity that you see, to me, those are my favorite events.
I asked you what your favorite event was, and you just listed them all.
All.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean,
all of the above.
Kayak birding also involves, no, I'm kidding.
Well, I'll say at every single event, I have the same sort of experience where it's just like, I pause and I just like, wow, I'm getting paid to do this. This is my job. And it's just like, pinch me, It's unbelievable. Each one of our events are awesome. And some of my favorite parts are similar to what Jeff has already mentioned, is just seeing the light go off in people's heads. Like, oh, this animal's connected to this animal and connected to this animal. It makes a whole, part of a whole new world. And it's very cool. And I love getting students that come up to us and are like, hey, I'm thinking about being a wildlife manager or a herp biologist or a bird biologist. Hey, email us. Let us know. I'll tell you my journey and what I did. And, I hope to see you around in 10 years, because usually they're like 10 years old. So,
yeah.
But yeah, that's one of my favorite parts, is just instilling that same passion that both Jeff and I have, and most of us here, if not all of us here at Game and Fish, have about wildlife.
Well, and since Sandhill Cranes kind of seemed like it was at the top for you, just like
it
Jeff.
Is pretty much.
What do you, Cheyenne, love about that experience with the Sandhills so much?
I mean, where else in the world can I go that I'm going to see 20,000 cranes come up at one time with the orange, beautiful sunset? There's no other place I can think of where I can see something like that, on an easy basis. I can drive 5 hours and get there and do it. Yeah. So, that's the most magical part for me.
And she's so right with that. And we always get there because the event starts early, right before sunrise.
Oh,
so
at
we
nighttime.
usually meet
You're
people.
right, Jeff. I know where you're going. Sorry.
Yeah, so we get there the night before, and we usually sleep out at the bunkhouse or camp. And listening to the cranes the night before, they're all night long. They're just communicating with each other, and they set up shop, so to speak, at night in the draw, surrounded by water, and they do that for safety reasons, right? It's harder for a predator to sneak up on them if they're in the middle of the water. And the water's only, on a human, would be about shin deep. But that's where they are, and they're just kind of trumpeting all night long, and they make such a noise. You can hear it for a mile or two, easy a mile or two. And hearing the 20 or 25,000 cranes make that noise at night, and we know the next day we're going to be seeing them take off, and we're going to be educating people about them and taking them out to photograph them. That anticipation is really one of my favorite parts.
Yeah, I think this last time we spent like over 2 hours just sitting outside. You got the stars because it's so clear out there, and you got the cranes making their noises, and you just get lost, and all you want to do is sit there. No phones. You don't need anything. You just sit there and kind of just be in the moment. It's awesome.
Do you get much sleep with the
I mean, we don't need to talk about that part.
Not on those nights.
Not on those nights,
we make up
but-
for it at other times.
I gotcha. Okay, so people have been listening to us now. They've heard about bat netting. They've heard about bighorn sheep tours, kayaking, sandhill cranes. They've heard it all. If people want to get involved, they want to learn more about these opportunities or how they can participate in one of these events, what do they do? Where do they go?
Good question. So the easiest thing to do is remember what you're after. So you're after wildlife, right? So if you go to the Arizona Game and Fish homepage and you look at the banners across the top, there's hunting, there's fishing, there's boating. Wildlife has its own link. If you click on wildlife, it brings up a bunch of additional links right on the following page. The very first button that comes up is wildlife viewing. If you click on that, that brings you to our page.
Look for the binoculars.
Look for the binos, and that brings you to our page, and that gives you links to our cams. It gives you a link to register for all of our upcoming events. We typically populate that all year long. We add new events to it, but we generally populate it in February or March for the coming season. So our busiest season is the hottest time of year because that's when it's the best for wildlife viewing. That's when the critters are active and out there. So if you really want to get the head start on registering for some of our events, most of our in-person events fill, and they fill very quickly, some of them within hours.
Okay.
Bighorn sheep in particular. Our bighorn sheep tours fill very, very quickly. And there's very limited seats because it's on a boat, right? So we can only fit
Sure.
X number of people on them. So
But these are posted out in advance, so you can plan ahead.
Yes, and we post those typically sometime in March, no later than April. So I would suggest that if you're interested in those, you do one of two things. You can always shoot us an email, Cheyenne or myself, an email. And if you do that, we can put you on our list of basically people that we will notify. The other good thing to do is to sign up for Wild Plus Life News with Arizona Game and Fish Department, and they always promote our events and talk about what's coming up over the next couple of months.
And if you're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, we also promote our events on there too with links to get straight to the event.
Okay, so look for it there. It's all on the website, www.azgfd.gov. Before we wrap up, is there you said before it's a nominal cost, right? Some of these, there's a cost associated, but you're not going to break the bank on this.
No, we try to make everything reasonable, and that is something that we definitely query the people that attend our events with a post-event survey. And we take the results of that survey very seriously. We really do. We've made changes to events based upon that survey. And one of the questions, there's many questions that are focused on this, but one of them is, did you feel that it was good value for the dollar? And if we ever got, the answer no. If there was even a significant portion of people that said, no, this was not worth it, we would absolutely take that into consideration. But right now, it's almost 100% say yes. It's about 99.6% that say yes, and that they thought it was good value. So we always take that into consideration, but we're also, in addition, doing more no-fee events than we've ever done in the past. Most of those are wildlife lectures that we give about general topics like birding or how to go about wildlife viewing, who's watching whom, things like that. And we give those sometimes through our own website. We call them in-house lectures, but we do those free of charge because, again, the goal is to reach everybody. We want to reach ever greater numbers, proportion of the Arizona population.
Well, and word on the street is that bat netting prices are going up because of your famous pallet bat impression.
I don't know if it's
or they're going down.
Yeah, I'd say that's more likely. Just
something for people to see. Jeff, Cheyenne, thank you so much both for being here with us today, and we hope to get out and see you at a wildlife viewing event sometime soon.
We look forward to it. Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening. Visit us online at www.azgfd.gov.